I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Oh my goodness! It is space. It is the final frontier. It is the Star Trek Picard after show. Welcome! It's the whole gang back together again. I'm Christian Bladt. To my left, your camera right, Flobito!
What up? How's it going, everybody?
New content every day?
New content every week is Flobito.
Every week. Yeah, it's putting too much pressure on you.
Yeah, I know, right?
And the man, the legend, sometimes a myth, Mr. Frank Moran.
Hey, everybody.
Sometimes a myth.
And Nikki Bailey, who has been ready to go for about 20 minutes and can't believe that we're only starting now.
I can't wait.
And everyone in the chat, welcome. We're glad you're here. Flobito has a very special relationship with the chat.
Yeah.
People love him.
Star Drew's already there. Joe Aarons is already there. It's had a good time.
That's great. This is the third show today where Star Drew has been in the chat, and we always appreciate it. So There's so much to talk about, but I want to start big picture. Overall thoughts. Nikki, I know you'll explode if I don't ask you first. So, just overall big picture. Let's not get into specifics. Just how are you feeling right now?
I'm like super emotional. I had to watch it twice in a row because I cried through the whole first episode. I love it.
Frank, same response, right?
It was, yeah. I thank goodness I had a lot of Kleenexes with me because I went through them.
Flobo?
It was okay. Yeah. It was okay. And I know I'm going to get dragged for that. I don't know how much time you go into the overall thoughts.
No,
but
it's all right. No, it's okay. Look, here's what I think. It was very interesting. If they're going to give me 8 episodes where Jean-Luc Picard sits there and reads through the yellow pages, I'm in. I don't care. That's fine. Yeah, and because yellow pages will come back in the 24th century, you'll see. But I was just excited to see him. Very intrigued by the storyline. I just feel like, this is kind of the building blocks for the season. This was laying the groundwork. But I thought it was very well done. And as we've said, for Discovery, didn't cut any corners on the budget for this.
Sure.
And outside of North America, this is an Amazon streaming show. Bezos has money, and they put it on the screen. So I think that we're not going to be disappointed for the visuals in that. And I don't know, I was just excited to have this story, just continue, because it wasn't that long ago that Patrick Stewart was saying, like, I feel like I'm done with that. So that's why when you hear him right now saying, like, I can't imagine playing Charles Xavier again, give him time. He'll always come back to it.
We'll wait.
But that's a whole different ending for that guy.
But I'm just saying.
A flashback, something. It can happen.
There's always time. There's always time. Let us know in the chat some of your overall feelings, and of course we'll talk about favorite moments, and we will later have our special segment, which Flobo has named
Picard, engage.
Should we explain what that is so people can figure out how to participate?
Oh, for sure. We're going to talk about... I love that drop. Basically, the most engaging, most important, the most insightful scene that helps to build character for Picard himself or a member of his eventual crew.
Or members of the eventual crew. And in the booth, we have Mr. Ryan J. Nilsson himself, who has also seen this.
Ryan.
Ryan, as one of the co-hosts of Popcorn Talks Star Wars News, you never struck me as a Star Trek guy, but where do you stand with this particular franchise?
I stand neutral. I am actually wearing my Baby Yoda sweatshirt as we talk right now.
Oh, my goodness.
Is that sacrilegious? I don't know.
I don't know. It's hard to say, really.
This was mostly just like a curiosity viewing.
Right.
In a man who has only seen 3 of the films. And...
All right, well, that's enough.
Yeah, it's enough.
It's okay, Ryan. It's all right.
And by the way, his 3 films are seeing Star Trek 5 3 times. That's
just offended everyone.
No, not at all.
We still love you.
We're among friends.
It's going to be the 3 J.J. Abrams movies. Let's just be honest. In any case, I think it's good to get that insight. So Ryan will be more than welcome to chime in as we go along. Let's go through it, and just seeing Jean-Luc. Obviously, it. Like we were saying, we didn't know. We didn't know if we were going to get him again. And I have a really important question. Anybody on the panel can answer. Was that the Enterprise D or E that we saw? I think it was the D. Ooh. It looks a little different than the E, which was the one that we got in the final films. Insurrection and Nemesis is the Enterprise E. Is that correct, Frank?
That is correct.
And that looked like the D to me, though. It did,
yeah, and as well as First Contact too.
Right, of course. Yes, yes. Oh, wait. The E was in first. Oh, yeah, because it's after Generations. You're absolutely right. All right. So, and the reason why I bring that up, because when Picard dreams, he's not dreaming about the E.
Yeah.
He's dreaming about his first ship. You know what I mean? Like, that's the one. I don't think James T. Kirk dreamed about the Enterprise A. Right. I just don't feel like it. And I think that dream sequence is very telling. Was that how much of your crying, Nikki, happened during playing a card game with the Lieutenant Commander Data?
Well, just the fact that it started with a card game got me to weeping. Yeah. And I was just like, are we going to just pick up from and then I was a little disturbed by Data's appearance. Because I needed a way to explain why Data looked older, I decided it was a dream right then and there.
Yeah, well, I mean that's going to make sense. I think that we haven't established that androids can get older like that. But if they wanted to, yeah, I mean, I felt like it was going to be a dream because I knew what the show was, and he wasn't just playing cards in the middle of the night. Frank, if that had been the whole episode, if it was like a high stakes Texas Hold'em in space, it would have been all right?
Yeah, I mean, just like 6 minutes, and then they just like, all right,
yeah, that would have been short tracks. The short tracks, it's gonna just be a bunch of card games.
It's supposed to be on Amazon,
and then the next episode they'll play board games.
Oh, right. Great,
Parcheesi. Look, you haven't lived until you've seen Will Riker go Yahtzee.
Right,
that's true.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
It is, if we're like comparing Kirk with the Enterprise, as you're saying,
sure,
and Picard with the Enterprise, I was, like Kirk, he loved that ship.
Yeah, they couldn't.
But I never felt like
they couldn't take it away from him.
I never felt like that same love for the Enterprise from Picard. I mean, I certainly he was passionate about his command, but I never felt like that intense love that I always felt like Kirk had for the Enterprise.
True. I think that's a great observation. I think it's probably, I don't know. I think that Picard was very fond of being a captain, but I think he was always longing for a little bit more. But maybe that's just because Kirk got so much more action down on the planets. I mean, Jean-Luc, he got to play a flute once. So, and yes, I'm just exaggerating.
But it was nice at least to see the Enterprise D do some sort of different shot than we'd seen so many reused shots over the years in Next Generation. So I was like, all right, I'm down for some new vantage point on the D.
Yeah. Well, imagine cutting to a standard definition,
that would have been cute.
Model in front of like a matte painting of the planet. So yes, I'm glad we didn't get that. And then I go back to Nikki again because of the level of emotions. When Data asks Jean-Luc, "Why are you stalling, Captain?" He says, "I don't want the game to end." Yeah, I thought that might have been it.
Yes, there were so many.
Because
but definitely,
I don't want the game to end either. I think we can realize that when he had all queens, by the way, that tells me a little bit something. Now, Flobo, we've established on the Star Trek Discovery after show,
the best after show ever.
Agreed. This one will rival it and could possibly overtake it. We'll find out.
Yeah.
That you're relatively new to this
Yes,
Star Trek
I am.
universe. And when last we left Flobo,
Yes.
you were about to start Next Generation.
Yeah, I did a poll with the followers of the show what series to watch. Deep Space Nine won, and all the hosts of the Star Trek panel got me in a corner room and was like, TNG or else, sucker. And I sat down and I watched.
That sounds like Frank.
Yeah,
That
totally.
was a direct quote.
He was holding a bat too. That was crazy. So yeah, I got through 5.5 seasons of Next Generation. I understand it. I totally understand why it has that appeal that it does. But I am a relative newcomer. Discovery is prime to me, I guess.
Sure. And why haven't you finished?
So we talked about this during the season. Like, these shows are not made to be binged. They give you so much to go through and to digest week to week, and it's like, well, see you next week. You're like, what?
I would say even contemporary series that have 22 to 24 episodes are not meant to be binged.
Sure.
Binge shows are like 8 to 13 episode shows, and then once you get beyond that, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's take a break once in a while.
Right.
I think you slowed down because I stopped nagging you about it. I'm gonna get back on I'm gonna get back on my nag game.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So you feel like you know Jean-Luc, whereas you didn't know him, I think, when we were doing Discovery. So this isn't quite as new to you.
Right.
Now, have you seen any of the films?
I've seen a couple of them. I think
the Next Generation films. I meant to specify.
I saw First Contact. That's Next Generation, right?
That is. Yeah.
See, all right. Props to me.
Yeah.
No, I think that watching the TV show really put in a lot of the character traits, which was great because they do come forward in Picard. So it's not like this totally new interpretation. It wasn't a reboot at all. But again, because my first language was Discovery, everything in my brain goes through Discovery first. So the first scene was a cool scene. I didn't get the heartstrings pulled as much because I wasn't on board. Now, if it was like a character like Giorgio or something, I'd probably be like, oh my God, Giorgio. But I feel like as an outsider, those nostalgia thing was not there.
All right. Well, I just wanted to be able to get the wide range of opinions here. And Flobo, if you had a dog, would you name him number one?
I will now.
Okay.
You said it was such like loving grace.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, number one, second in command.
Frank, how do you think Will Riker feels about the fact that he has a dog named number one?
I know.
It's very Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yes.
He named the dog Indiana. It was with that, and I think we knew that from one of the trailers that the dog was named number one, but it still made me laugh.
Sure, I mean, I guess ultimately you got to think of it as flattering, right? If your beloved sidekick they name after somebody with a deep personal connection. I guess if somebody named their dog Christian, you wouldn't feel demeaned by that. Wouldn't you feel appreciative that they decided to name him that?
No, I mean, I guess not. I think I wouldn't take it personally. I think if the dog was named Christian Blatt from Greenwood Lake, New York, I would be like, hey. That's a very specific feeling right there.
Yeah, but they love their dog, so that ultimately that's a compliment, right?
All right, fair enough.
And also,
I like that.
the dog number one is more likely to do what you want it to do than Riker number one would have.
Oddly enough, though, the dog number one also looks much better with a beard. So just make sure that he keeps it there.
I just want to say a shout out to Tatus One who says, anyone reading the chat? I am. There's been a bit of a debate. Joel and Christopher are saying it was the Enterprise D.
Yes.
Well, Eduardo was saying it was the E. Looks like 2-1 so far in the chat as far as the D.
Well,
Right.
I welcome the artist's rendering of both and give me a comparison, and I will certainly be ready to change my tune.
No, that saucer section was too wide. It's not the E.
Right.
It's like amateurs.
The E they took out the shopping mall and a couple of the swimming pools, so it was a little bit more streamlined. So we do get to see Chateau Picard in France, which of course was lovely, and anytime that Jean-Luc speaks French. But we immediately shift to Greater Boston, which it was very clear from when you saw the cityscape that people still can't drive there. So it was really great to see. And I always think it's interesting because we don't get a lot of, we get it in this episode. We get Earth, we get San Francisco. And it's usually kind of the only place we get, at least in the United States. So we got to see another city, which I thought was very interesting. And the thing that I'm going to admit really took me out of the whole scene was this notion that in the 24th century, 300 plus years from right now, the word dude had survived. And
universal.
Well, I mean, I guess. But so does it go away for 250 years and it kind of just came back?
Right.
Or does it never go away? And look, these are the important hard-hitting issues that you're going to get when you tune into the Star Trek Discovery after show, this is actually Picard, but it's the same people. And then the show used to be called Star Trek Weekly. It's really hard to keep everything straight, But I think that we get a very intriguing, sort of high-paced action there. I'm sort of wondering, just overall, Flobo, your thoughts watching the the mayhem unfold there in that Boston apartment.
Yeah, sure. It was definitely a departure for me. I'm not to say that the Star Trek series is devoid of action, but exploration happens first. But now you got this kind of scene of intrigue. You're like, what's going on? Is it a cyberpunk? Like, does cyberpunk really qualify here? But that kind of feeling or vibe. And
sure.
It's definitely an interesting thing for me. I never expected that. I expected it to be a lot more of the first couple scenes of Picard wandering through what his life was.
Yeah.
So.
I wrote down in my notes why it always got to be a brother that die first.
Did you write it with an accent too?
I did. I wrote it with an accent.
Yeah,
I did.
His shirt was not red, by the way. Or was it? No, I don't think it was. Wait a minute, you have the red shirt on.
I know. I did that on purpose.
We're not going to beam down to the planet. We're going to stay here on the bridge. I'm worried for you now.
I know.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously, I think in this day and age, when you see people that are very excited and celebrating good news, something's about to go bad.
Oh, totes.
So, yeah. What are your thoughts, Frank, watching the action unfold? You trying to piece it together, or are you just like, no, they'll explain it to me?
Yeah, that's fine, guys. I'm ready to sit back. A nicely shot action sequence.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah. It kind of starts seeding putting out the breadcrumbs, like.
Yeah. Because I can do all those moves that Dahj did, but I can't do it with a bag on my head. So I don't have any of my skills with a bag on my head. So so I was like, oh yeah. But I did think it was very intriguing, and sort of this backstory that gets laid throughout is, this notion of what happened that took Jean-Luc Picard out of Starfleet, and it of course goes back to the Romulan sun and all of that, which I think we knew that was at the center of this. At least, let's put it this way, I knew that. Did this revelation surprise anyone that this is going to tie into the incident that created the, for lack of a better words, J.J. Abrams verse?
No, I think it was a big play they made in the movie for that,
Yeah.
so they could explain how Spock got launched back in time. But I feel like that was the last true thing that we saw, at least present day at that point of the Star Trek universe. I feel like they needed to expand from there. So
right, and they needed to make sure. I thought it was a very calculated move to make sure that everybody knows. It's like, yeah, we've gone back to that timeline, and we're going to go forward, but we're acknowledging that this thing happened. It's. I don't know. I think that when you reboot the reboot sometimes, or deboot the reboot, I don't even know exactly what it was. I think it's important, but I think it's good to see kind of the repercussions of these things. And
true, because you see, from Picard's relationship with Spock, who had his relationship with the Romulans, to see all that, and to everything that happened in the course of the first J.J. Abrams film, it made sense to use that as a starting point, and even Picard's stuff in Nemesis too.
Right, exactly. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but a very important thing that we need to make sure we focus on, sort of going chronologically through the show, is so Star Trek just doesn't do interesting or exciting title sequences anymore. I think that's what they've decided ever since Enterprise. I think that they're, and honestly, as much as I love Deep Space Nine, that's not a great one. It's like a good time to take a nap.
It's a hot take, man. I don't
Well,
know.
I'm just saying.
I like Discoveries. I actually downloaded the song. I like the song and the little the schematics and all that. But this one, I was like, I was with you with Picard, but I'm just. Okay.
How often do you listen to that? For real?
All right,
At the gym.
It's a rotation.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's it.
I stand in my room, I play the song in my head, and I pose in the mirror.
Hashtag Flobo workout mix.
I'm just saying.
Hot jams with a Z.
It's a hot jam.
All right.
Just hot take, man.
I don't know. I I was hoping for more, but I guess maybe it is a little bit more of a somber tale. It's a sort of a later in life Jean-Luc Picard. But I can't wait to start skipping past that.
I really liked it.
Really? Well, let's hear more about that.
Did
you download the song?
I did not download the song, but I did go back and rewatch it because I was looking partly for clues, but also I felt like it set some good mood. It set a good tone. So after I watched it the first time, I went back and I just sort of, I loved following that little piece, and then it ended up in his face. And
Oh boy.
Well, the chat is saying, Joel Aaron says, I agree with Christian's take on the titles. Christopher Anuevo says, I had to skip the intro. And randomly, I guess, Eduardo Cruz, but to your last point, said, I don't want Kelvin stuff in the Prime Universe. So, kind of.
Well, Kelvin stuff isn't in the Prime Universe. It is the incident that caused the. That's the Kelvin universe. Is the Abrams verse. So, that I think is the point. Just making sure everybody knows that is canon. That really happened. But yeah, we're not over there right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
But with the sequences, there's something about, even with Discovery as well as Picard, when you first watch it, you're like, okay. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, this is still going.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
right.
I may in like 4 episodes
done?
be over it. But like, yeah.
It's a good song in Discovery.
Frank, I know what you do every time you watch any Star Trek series is you always put the titles on mute and you sing the theme from Enterprise.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yes.
So you want to give us a little
Cruising through the stars.
Love it.
Green girls beaming aboard.
I want to tip you. I wish I had some extra change.
That happened.
We really get to, look, just looking at Patrick Stewart, listening to him, this, I think, is a very specific time in Jean-Luc's life. It's sadly a lot closer to the end than it is to even the middle, and I think even if they had done a show with Picard 10 years ago, I don't think that this is the approach you take. And there's 2 things that I made a note of that really stood out for me. One is the quote that he says, "The dreams are lovely. It's the waking up I'm beginning to regret." Ouch. And the fact that when he ordered his Earl Grey from the replicator, it was decaf.
Yeah.
Jean-Luc, what are you doing?
Because he's already not sleeping well.
Yeah, I know.
So, I mean, yeah.
I don't know. I just think that was the moment when he ordered decaf where I'm like, oh no, you're not going to be with us forever, are you, Jean-Luc?
But I think that's part of it, though, right? Like seeing that he's now so much older and also much more emotional than, a much more emotional person than he was allowed to be when he was the captain of the Enterprise. So like, and it made me think, oh, I like this older, sort of softer, more emotional guy. And I'm glad that you did watch The Next Generation so that you could get to know that version of him and compare him to this version.
A family member,
that you didn't just watch Encounter at Farpoint and go like, all right, I got it.
Right.
Yeah, I know who this guy is. And when's Tasha Yar showing up, by the way?
I think there's something in terms of this, like, I would rather see this show about Picard at this age in his life as opposed to Kirk, because Kirk is such an action guy. To see him like later in his life, if he had not fallen off that terrible bridge in Generations, you're seeing a man that's going to be old and feeble and that can't be the man that we love so much. But Picard, more of a philosopher than a combat guy, an action star. So seeing him as an older man being contemplating his regrets and his life, it intrigues me a lot more than seeing a Kirk series at that kind of stage of his life.
Somewhere, William Shatner sheds a gigantic tear because he's still holding out for the Kirk series. He's surprised that they're doing this show before the Kirk series.
Time to call the Judith and Garfield Reeve Stevens and write another book.
We get a lot of background from the interview that he does, and of course, anytime that an interview is about to take place and someone references, oh, well, they're not going to ask about this. You're like, oh, cool. They're going to tell us that thing that we really want to know. Nikki, how do you feel Jean-Luc handled himself in that interview, and how much did you want to punch Michelle Hurd in the face for the questions she asked our dear, sweet Admiral, retired?
I was a little annoyed at the line of questionings and the smirk. Oh yeah, the little smug look on her face.
We call those, even in the 21st century, those are gotcha questions.
Yeah. And I thought, he maintained his composure as long as he could, but when he got so angry and sort of laid down the law and sort of expressed exactly how he felt, I was like, I think that Jean-Luc from the series would have been able to hold it together and be less emotional about it in that moment. And I felt like this is again maybe a side effect of being older, is that he's no longer able to just sort of find to be that diplomat that he's always been. So
Yeah, I mean, I also think it's very clear that this is a Jean-Luc who has seen things that have really changed him, and I think sort of this, this relocation of they say 900 million Romulans. They had to figure out what to do with them, and just the phrase that Mars remains on fire to this day, and then we learn about the ban on synthetic life. And I think that we've already seen how close of an attachment he had to Data, and how his death. I think it's established that it's about 15 years, which I believe that's fairly accurate as to when Nemesis actually was. It was a little bit more, but it was about 15 years ago. So just the fact, I think he tries to hold it together, but then when they push the button of talking about Data, I think that's when he just loses it, and he makes the point that Starfleet has kind of really withdrawn, and it's not Starfleet anymore, and that's really why I'm not there anymore. I think that's very telling that would happen to Jean-Luc Picard, because no, he's not the James T. Kirk who isn't just punch first and ask questions later. I mean, James Kirk was like punch first and we don't need to ask any questions. I'm sure we were right. So I don't know. I thought that really gave us a lot for filling in these last 15 years. And I'm just sort of wondering, Frank, what were some of your thoughts about the explanation of these events and the way that he was involved? He left the Enterprise to go help out in this situation.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, it's always one of those when you're taking time away from a character. What are the circumstances that you will see them step away from the ship? Whether it's being promoted through the ranks, like Kirk was, or in this case, it was Picard stepping out to go for a humanitarian effort to save all the Romulans, as many Romulans as he could. So, I mean, it seemed in character with Picard and what he'd want to do for this. So it wasn't like, that seems kind of weird. Why would he leave the Enterprise behind?
Right. It wasn't like he left the Enterprise to start a ska band.
It's like, wait, what?
Yeah. Like Worf, that would have made sense. But
he's got his flute out there from Inner Light. He's just jamming. And you're like, huh?
Well, the flute would be, he's in a Jethro Tull tribute band. That would make a little bit more sense. So this is, I think, that is basically when we really start to hit the ground running with what the story is, at least for this episode, and what the ground that they're laying is. We're getting to know a little bit more about Dahj, who has, really doesn't know what happened. We hear the sort of that abduction team, or I don't know if that was, basically an assassin team, really, that they're worried about whether or not she's been activated yet. So they clearly know a lot more about her than she does. And she has this vision of Jean-Luc Picard. And so seeing him on TV, she's like, okay, great. That is where I need to go. And the beauty of Star Trek is that you never have to worry. It's like, oh, she got there already? Well, she's in Boston. And you want to go to France, it doesn't take that long.
No.
Exactly. Oh, you're in France now. That's great. Oh, hang on. I forgot something in Boston. All right, now I'm back to France. Everything's great. So, I thought that it was very interesting. And I think that Jean-Luc, very caring and nurturing, is, I don't think he understands at all what has brought her here, but he feels for her. What did you think of his interactions with Dahj, Flobo?
Oh, I thought it was on point. Like if someone came to your house, you would be like, well, what are you doing here, all cloaky and different and crazy looking? But
especially cloaky, by the way.
Yeah, cloaky, man. But the fact that number one was ready to say, hey, look, we passed the sniff test, quite literally, and he's always willing to help. I mean, here's somebody who's having a rough day. I won't say the worst day of his life. He's having a rough day and dealing with that. And here's someone saying, hey, look, I need your help. And it was no question. It wasn't like, don't forget it. You know how in movies it's almost like a cliche where it's like, you don't need me, and it's a giant reveal. It's like, you do need me. It was just like a quick, I want to help you. Why are you here? I was on board. I think that was a cool, inciting incident.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I the whole thing, I think that they did a good job building her story and having it be intriguing. She's talking to her mom, who clearly knows a lot. It's like, we should go back to Jean-Luc Picard. I didn't say I went there. No, you definitely did. You totally did. And like, no, I don't think I did. So, and then of course, culminating with the end of the episode, which we'll get to momentarily, I think that they did a good job, asking a lot of questions. Again, I'm going to go to Nikki because we shortly thereafter see a scene where Data is painting. And if I think any of us would notice that both Jean-Luc and Data are wearing very specific uniforms. The uniforms from the TV series, from the early seasons, from before there were any movies, any Next Generation movies. There's no gray with the little turtleneck. No, it's those It's not the season 1 uniforms because no one would dream about that.
No,
that would be a nightmare.
But
there's sort of this idea. Would you like to finish it? Would you like to finish the painting? I don't know how. More tears, Nikki?
yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
What do you think that these?
Confirmed.
What do you think that these Data dreams mean? Obviously, we get a little bit from it, but sort of putting the two of them together, sort of this idea of not wanting to complete things for Jean-Luc.
Well, I think that the whole, I don't know how to finish it, and Data saying yes, you do. I think maybe Jean-Luc, has known for years somewhere in his mind that there's still more work to be done. And, he says later in the episode, this whole thing about how he hasn't been living his life. He's been waiting to die. And I think that maybe Data is that part of his brain that is reminding him that he's still vital and he still has work to do. That's a real kind of spiritual woo-woo kind of take on it.
No, I like that. Yeah. Please. Any woo-woo, Frank?
Let's get our incense
make sure
out.
that you have some.
I'm just saying.
Any woo Frank is my new catchphrase.
So how do you see sort of the way that Picard is dreaming, about Data and how that is really helping him understand the current situation he finds himself in, Frank?
I guess that's always the convenient, I don't want to say plot device, but it certainly as we have a character that has ties to Data, we're coming in with Picard where he's having these dreams like, oh yeah, now I'm starting to have these dreams a lot more frequently about Data, and it just so happens to tie in to the greater story I'm about to get myself involved in. But that's a common trope that we've seen before. So I'm fine with buying into that. It's like, all right,
right, and I think that I guess it was very important. I read this quote that for Brent Spiner that for him to reprise the role of Data, he didn't want the death to be undone in any way. So seeing him as a dream, I think works, and it also addresses the fact of that android looks like 17 years older, which on Star Trek Weekly when we talked about it, some of the movies that we watched, Frank. We did have to ask the question of, I guess androids can gain weight. I didn't realize that. I didn't know they needed to hit the gym.
He's trying to blend in.
Yeah,
right. To really get the full human experience.
Yeah, that's true.
I did like it. I did like that it prompted him to go to Starfleet, where he goes to get the Starfleet archives to get the other painting. Which one? It's like, why is Data giving him two of the same painting? What is that all about?
No. Data didn't give him the second painting. Data gave him the first painting, and then after Data died, Jean-Luc took the painting to safekeep it. That's the story I created. Thank you.
Okay, you know what? You created a story better than whomever wrote this episode, which I forgot to make a note of. So, and by the way, what do you think the significance is of that being the Starfleet archives, which it looked like, that it seems like that was Starfleet not that long ago. So have they withdrawn so much that they're like on a fifth floor walk up in Canarsie, Brooklyn, like that's really, they just have like a couple of rooms and it's not Starfleet like it used to be? Did you get the feeling that they've really scaled it down and it's like, we just like to kind of look backwards. These are our archives. We don't really talk about new stuff. We just like the old stuff. We just like to play the hits. Did you get any kind of, because I don't know, that seemed apparent to me that like Starfleet didn't seem particularly active. Maybe it's just, across town or something, but did you get a feeling for the state of Starfleet from that? I'll ask anyone on the panel if you.
What I thought was interesting was I found myself much more intrigued by how these archives work. Like how truly big they are. Yeah. Are the rooms that they go into, is it like a tesseract where... Because that's a lot of people that have ever been in Starfleet who have maybe all holding on to memorabilia. That's
I don't know that they do it for everybody. I think that they would, do it for, like I bet that Admiral Janeway probably has a room there, but not everybody. Whatever. I can't remember Ronnie Cox's character's
Didn't it say
name.
it was a museum though?
Angelico? He doesn't have one?
Yeah, I think it's a museum. Yeah.
Why would he?
Yeah. What?
I'm just saying. I don't know. I'm glad you remembered his name.
That's right.
All I could remember was that it was Ronnie Cox who played him. And I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, I thought I saw something that said it was a museum and not like it was an archive museum. So maybe what we got to see was just where they store the things that are not currently on display.
I mean, you would assume that the voyages of Jean-Luc, and that's why I mentioned Janeway, because of where they have been, I think, and Cisco for sure, just where they had been and what they had seen would probably be particularly interesting historically. There are probably lots of other Starfleet captains that, they might have like a shelf, maybe like a closet. It's like
you get a bucket. There you go.
Yes. This is their world's best captain mug that was replicated without a handle. That sort of a thing.
Like Captain Harriman from Enterprise B. He's just got.
He didn't know. No, that mug was broken. And, you could not put it back together again. So I think that again. Dahj shows up and he's like, "Oh, hey, good to see you. How'd you find me?" And I think that was sort of a cool sequence when she figures out how to look for him. And what are you thinking, Flobo, when we're getting to see a little bit more of the capabilities for what Dahj can actually do?
That scene's actually one of my favorites in the show because they didn't forget the fact that Picard was that old. And he couldn't keep up at first, so I thought that was pretty interesting. But I definitely about her role is changing. The chat's kind of having a discussion of what she is and what she can give. And some are saying maybe it might be a new interpretation of Lal. I don't know. I'm on board with that. I love their interaction. You can tell there's a rapport there. And the fact he said she was so important to Picard, to me, it was like, maybe I would have shed a tear if I had a soul.
If you had a soul.
Yeah.
But we've established.
Cold as ice, man. That's
That's why, by the way, if you want to see the fact that Flobo has no soul, catch us Mondays at 2 Pacific on the Curb Your Enthusiasm after show. There's no love shared there. Yeah, why not?
Why not?
It's within the network. I think it's fine. So I don't know. I thought that this was another nice fight sequence, and it is a little reminder that these CBS All Access shows are a lot more theatrical, as in cinema-like, than past Star Trek series. Again, this goes back to, well, we've got the money, let's actually spend it. So I thought it was cool, especially sort of the revelation of like, okay, so these are Romulans, and then that dude spits that like green acid that disintegrates her, and it's like, oh, I thought she was going to be with us for the season. I was not expecting that. So I was taken aback by that. I was very interested in all of it. I liked watching her fight and all that. But what did you think about that sequence in particular, Nikki?
The fight scene,
and the way it ends specifically.
I was confused about the spitting of because Romulans have green blood, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was like, what is this, that like acidic stuff that he's spitting at her? That was a little like, I don't know what the heck's happening.
I believe it was liquid plumber.
It was liquid. Yeah, that's good
it's
stuff.
It's a lot stronger in the 24th century.
But what I was really kind of excited about was how she made that ginormous leap up the steps.
Yeah.
And so
that would be the moment where maybe they could have spent a little bit more money, because there was such a wide shot. I'm like, so she jumped, but we have to see it from like a mile back.
Right.
That's great.
All strings.
Yeah. But I appreciated that, and it's exciting to see that this character can do all these fancy things, and is a woman, which is also exciting. Can I just really quickly, when Jean-Luc found her again, and they're sitting on the bench, and he says, "If you are who I think you are dear to me in ways that you can't understand. I will never leave you." Thank you, Ryan. That was the other part that made me sob a lot. And so I just needed to acknowledge that because the action was great, but the feels, man.
And yet 5 minutes later, she's dead. So,
Which made me cry even more.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that.
What would have been more appropriate would have been the Price is Right losing bit.
If I die, I would hear womp womp.
Well, yeah. I'll be there to play that. So this...
Chris McCurry in the chat says, I think the acid made the blaster blow up. So I guess it was the reaction of the acid.
I would say the acid also, it got on her face.
Yeah.
It didn't...
And Steven, one of our producers here, he thinks that there was some sort of like kill pill that maybe that Romulan had bitten down on something that gave him some acidic spewing.
Yeah. I think we get a great insight to sort of the development of synthetics, the program that was abruptly stopped. We get to see a model of Data in a drawer, and we're sort of learning a lot about it. There's reference to before. And I think before we dive into some of those specifics, I'll ask you first, Frank. What do you think the current status is in the story of, I guess, before, but also my assumption would be that Lore, Data's brother, is certainly still out there. There's no reason to assume he's not. I don't think... I know in later seasons, it's not like you ever had a sense that, he was, even if he was deactivated, which isn't something that we saw happen, I'm just saying he wouldn't be dead. So do you feel like there's something already out there and not just this like these components of Data that are in a drawer?
Because it is intriguing. I feel like it all hinges on Brent Spiner. I think if he was really invested in wanting to reprise the role of Data, I think that the transfer of Data's neural network down to B4 would have took.
Yeah.
But I think with Brent Spiner, I'll do some cameos, but I don't really want to.
Well, no, so I mean, look, and I think if Brent Spiner was really dedicated, he would have gotten a trainer. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
That's right. But so I feel like Lore could still be out there, and we also have Data's daughter that he built, Lal. Yeah. If wherever once he deactivated her, where did she go that time? So that's another possible character that could be on the map if they wanted to bring that one.
More important question, Nikki. Do you think Spot is still with us, or in kitty years maybe? It's
maybe. I mean, cats live, right? I don't know. I
mean, they do
cats.
have 9 lives.
I don't know. I don't really like them, so I'm just like
as long as dude. Yeah.
So, Flobo, this you didn't really need backstory from earlier iterations. How helpful did you find sort of this explanation of like, well, here's what we were working on. These are the things that could be possible. I feel like that, that was interesting for all of us, but I think that I'm sort of wondering your take on that, not having gotten to the end of the series, not having seen Nemesis, which was the final Next Generation film, and where, not really a spoiler alert, Data dies in that movie. So watch it with the kids. But I'm sort of wondering your take on that sequence.
Before I get there, I want to shout out to Edwater, who says, I don't mind slightly pudgy Data or Lore. LOL. All right, so I thought it was pretty cool. I like the idea of what that kind of was and the potential of what it was and how it was dangerous and taboo. And even, I guess I love bureaucracy. Having funding cut, was pretty cool to see. I feel like if I had not seen the Next Generation, I probably would have been confused of the B4s and the Lores and even the naming conventions of it all. But the idea of having it there and seeing that back was awesome. So like the show continues to pay forward in layers if you're familiar with the material. But as a new fan, it's definitely on the surface. It's pretty solid too. So.
Ryan, I know we're almost out of time. As someone who is relatively new to Star Trek, did you find elements of this episode in particular hard to follow, or were you just like, I'd probably get this if I'd seen more, or did you feel like you were able to enjoy it with sort of a limited exposure prior to this?
There are moments where I felt like I fell into darkness and everything else beyond.
Yes, well, sometimes you are your own nemesis.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was my own nemesis.
And I don't know, I feel like sitting at this desk, we're getting an insurrection from the booth.
I'm going to need that to stop. We cannot just pun our way through the rest of the show.
But we are going into undiscovered country here.
Oh my God.
So, all right.
You could say the pick was hard. Picard. Okay.
No.
So I feel like Nikki's going to be very angry on the entire voyage home.
Comedians hate Kate
And she's going to hope.
Oh my gosh.
She's going to hope that this was indeed the final frontier.
Oh my God.
Oh God.
And
Dad jokes in space.
And scene.
Dad jokes in
I
space.
can't get Search for Spock in there. I was really trying. Although, did find it interesting that as we sort of tie up before we give some final thoughts on our special segment, that we get the revelation that these android synthetics created in pairs, as was established with Data and Lore, that she had a twin. I'm not smart enough that I saw that coming. If everybody else did, great. I'm the idiot on the panel. That's fine. I get no problem with that. But this guy that she's talking to looked way too much like Ethan Peck as Spock. I was super confused.
Yes,
I'm
me
like,
too.
I'm like, oh, this is Spock, but like past Spock, future Spock. What? I don't know. I got very confused, and I was just like, I didn't like the casting because I really thought it was Spock for a second, and then I was super confused. All right, so I'm not alone
Spock
in
got
that.
to on Romulus for a while.
Yeah.
We got his freak on.
Every 7 years he gets his freak on. But let's talk about sort of the bigger reveal beyond the fact that her twin is alive and well, was that this Romulan reclamation site is a Borg cube. Thoughts all around. Flobo?
Didn't read that at all. I was like, why are they pulling back? This must be something very, very important. Okay. And I just, a casual.
Frank?
Intrigued. I mean, I know that's how it would play to Hugh and with 7 or 9. So
It's true. We do know that both Hugh and 7 of 9 are in the series. Nikki?
When I saw the cube in the opening sequence, I was like, "No, what are they going to do with that?" Because I intentionally didn't do tons of research beforehand. I wanted to be surprised. I'm excited to see where they got it. What is this, and how did they get it, and how are they using it? I'm excited to find out.
Somebody just threw it away. They were like, well, let me recycle that.
They were just like, we're done with this one.
Let's get to our special segment, Flobo.
Yeah, it's now time for Picard Engage. I love it. So like before, we were talking about the scene or the moment where a character really builds on their character or makes you go, wow, I see some depth in there. So here's my choice first. Was definitely after the explosion on that rooftop when Picard was knocked out. And when he came to, and he was like, I haven't been living. I've just been waiting to die.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, how profound is that? A guy who's literally seen war, but is really ready to go forward.
I referenced it already, but for me, it's that ordering his Earl Grey decaf. It's way more upsetting to me than it should have been. Because I think that we just all expected to hear him say "Make it so," engage, and Earl Grey hot, and we didn't actually get any of those things. We got so close, but it was Earl Grey decaf. What about you, Nikki?
You know, I think the one that moved me the most was when he said the thing I just quoted about, I will never leave you, when he was saying that to Dahj. But I also really enjoyed meeting Dr. Agnes Girardi and her sense of humor, and I'm hoping that she's going to be the funny one moving us forward. I mean, her little comment about, I wish you would come in on a day that, that I wasn't working.
My day off, yeah.
And I was like, I like her. I can't wait to get to know her. Yeah.
Yeah. Frank?
Just the two Romulans that are with Picard at the vineyard. I really like their dynamic. Mm-hmm. And the relationship with Picard.
They seem indebted to him in a lot of ways. I don't know who on the panel's handling news. I'm not smart enough.
Super fast news. Yeah. If you've been watching The View,
which we all do.
Well, I know Christian's got a DVR.
I do.
Patrick Stewart was on there a couple days ago saying, "Hey, Whoopi, come back and play with us in the second season," and she said no.
Yeah, no, she's like, nope. Guinan's gonna stay right here on The View.
That's right.
I would love to see Whoopi, and that tells me that I guess she's not in season 1.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, whether it's just a cameo a la Riker and Troy,
that's
or
fine. I would love. That's a character that hundreds of years old, so it'll be great to see. Mm-hmm. All right, so we are in fact out of time. we will maybe pick up the pace a little bit next week, which let's hope Picard does that too. No, I'm just kidding. But that is a little bit of the criticism. There's an insane review from Entertainment Weekly about how bad this was, and I'm like, they clearly saw a different show than I did. But we'll call them out next week. We will be back next Thursday at 9 Pacific to talk more Picard. But until then, Nikki, where can people find you?
At Nikki Bailey _ on all the social medias.
And Happy Go Frank, where can people find you?
Happy Go Jackie.
And Flobo.
I gotta be all complicated around. You can find me on Twitter at FloboBoys, on Instagram at Flobito, and Flobito.com.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. And as I referenced earlier, Flobo and I, Mondays at 2 Pacific for the Curb Your Enthusiasm after show right here on AfterBuzz TV. That is all the time we have for this week, but thanks so much for a great chat that we had going live. And if you're watching the archive version, please leave comments. But until next week, live long and prosper.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.